Today we're going to see if we can get this diesel-powered 1984 Volkswagen Jetta running again. This car is actually not mine and it belongs to my neighbor, and it's been sitting for the last 5 years. Will it run again? Well, let's find out. Fast forward a bit and the Jetta's in the shop. Now we can take a better look at this 40-year-old Volkswagen. You know, aside from the faded paint, at first glance this car really seems to be very solid. Now here's something that the hardcore Volkswagen people can relate to. Once I closed the garage door, this car filled the shop with an aroma that's so common on vintage Volkswagens. I actually find this to be a pleasant smell. Anyway, let's take a look under the hood and see what we gotten ourselves into. So this is a 1.6-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder diesel engine. The owner of the car actually put a lot of work into this engine about 5 years ago, and as I recall, he said the cylinder head's been reconditioned, but after putting the car back together, he just couldn't get it started, and he thinks the timing may be off. Well, that's kind of scary. You see, on these engines, the timing's critical, and if it's not right, well, severe engine damage can occur. So believe it or not, this timing belt's brand new. Well, it was brand new 5 years ago. Meh, I think this belt's seen better days, even though this engine has never ran since it was installed. I feel like we need to treat this car as if it needs a new timing belt and move forward from there. But before we dig into the engine, I want to have a look at some of the parts that are in the trunk. That'll give us a good idea how much work's been done already. Wow, lots of stuff. Oh, here's the water pump box. Let's see what's inside. And it's a used water pump. That's good news. That means the pump on the engine is likely brand new, so we don't need to worry about that. What else do we have? Oh, a box of empty boxes. How do you break one of these? Interesting. And a Velcro headset without a head gasket. And it looks like most of the gaskets were already used. Now, off camera, I did check the rest of the boxes and they're all empty. So it looks like basically a lot of the seals and gaskets have already been replaced on this engine. So, while digging around in the trunk, I came across some specialty tools that will need to replace the timing belt. This guy is a camshaft locking tool, and this is something we'll definitely need today. And we also have a timing belt tensioner tool, and this is nice to have, but there are ways to improvise if we didn't have this tool. And finally, we have an injector pump alignment pin. This is great to have, but a Craftsman 7/16 deep well in 1/4-inch drive is the same diameter and can be used in a pinch. Well, that's pretty much all the specialty tools that we'll need, so we're good to move forward with the timing belt replacement. Yeah, everything under the hood looks dry and dusty, so I'm going to put a few sprays of WD-40 on the injector pump and the associated components, and with some luck, this stuff may soak in and lubricate the fasteners in the event we need to dig deeper on this engine. Certainly can't hurt. WD-40 is something I like to use to lubricate and clean. Once this stuff soaks in, it makes cleaning a lot easier. Alright, well, let's jack up the car and remove this wheel so we can take a better look at what's going on in the crankshaft end of this engine. You know, the rocker panels on this car are in perfect condition with zero rust. Yeah, this car may look questionable, but I'm truly amazed that it's more or less rust-free. Okay, well, that's the crankshaft pulley, and we'll need to take this guy off so I can get a better look at the lower end of the timing belt. Fast forward a bit and the pulley is off, and that's a good thing because it looks like some debris got trapped between the belt and the crank sprocket. Now keep in mind, all this stuff was brand new 5 years ago, but obviously right now we have some problems just from the fact the car has sat for so long. But that's no big deal. A little cleaning and a new belt should get this engine up and running again, as long as there's no internal damage to the engine. On these VW engines, the cam sprocket's not actually keyed to the camshaft, but instead it's held in place by a tapered shaft and of course this bolt. Anyway, this sprocket needs to come off no matter what, and now is a good time to remove it while the timing belt's holding it in place. And a few bumps with a soft blow hammer knocks the sprocket loose. Yeah, this sprocket looks okay, it just needs a quick cleanup to remove any debris. Let's take a look at that timing belt. The timing belt actually looks to be in really good shape. After all, it's brand new 5 years ago, but now it's junk. I guess if this was a non-interference engine, I would have a slightly different opinion, but since this is an interference engine, if this belt fails, the engine will likely be destroyed, so we're going to replace the belt. Yeah, that's amazing how much crap got on this belt from just sitting. Alright, let's pop the cam cover off so we can do a quick inspection, and this cover needs to come off so we can realign the camshaft to retime the engine. The cam cover was glued to the cylinder head with a massive amount of RTV sealant. I had to do a lot of cleaning, and to make sure nothing fell into the engine, I used the shop vac to instantly suck away any debris that came loose. Anyway, we're good to go to replace the cam cover gasket, but first we need to put the camshaft in the correct position. Before I rotate the cam, I'm going to rub some assembly lubricant on the cam lobes so nothing gets damaged when we attempt to start the engine later in the video. So this groove on the back of the camshaft is there so the cam can be aligned and locked into place when I reinstall the timing belt. The locking tool fits like this. Of course, I'll need to rotate the cam to get this tool to fit properly. Let's do that right now. And the tool is in place. This next part is somewhat difficult, and it really takes two people to do. Now down on the bell housing there's a hole, and this is what we need to look through in order to align the crankshaft. So in essence, one person has to look through the hole and watch for the timing mark, and another person on the other end of the engine has to spin the crankshaft. Well, it's just me in the shop today, so we're going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to place this camera near the hole in the bell housing, and from the other side of the engine I can see what's going on via an app on the mobile phone. Alright, I'm all set and ready to rotate the crankshaft. And over here I can watch the progress on the cell phone. So what we're looking for is this arrow to line up with the mark on the flywheel. And fast forward a few minutes and we have the crankshaft in the correct position. And like I said, this is a lot easier with two people. So basically we're ready to install the new timing belt, but before we do that, I want to prime the injector pump. Priming the pump now will flush the old fuel out of the system, if there's any, and later when we attempt to start the engine, the prime pump should get the engine to fire off almost immediately. When working on an older diesel engine like this one with a mechanical fuel injection system, there's nothing worse than trying to start an engine with a dry injector pump. So as you can see, I have the feed and the return line plumbed into a small fuel container, and that'll be our temporary fuel tank. The VW injector pump is self-priming, but that doesn't always work, so I'm going to use a mini fuel pump to force the fresh fuel into the injector pump. Now off camera I went ahead and switched the ignition switch on, and that will energize this solenoid on the injector pump, and in turn that will open a pathway for the fuel to circulate. If I disconnect this wire, you can hear the solenoid clicking, so that means the solenoid's working as far as opening and closing. And it looks like the fuel is circulating, which is good news. So before I can prime the fuel system, each of these nuts on the injectors has to be loosened. This will help purge the air and the old fuel from the system. So now all the nuts on the injectors are loose, let's prime the system. So to prime the system, I'm going to manually spin the injector pump over with this drill. It's going to make a bit of a mess, but future Jimbo will thank me for doing this right now. And that should be good enough. At this point I can install the timing belt and reassemble the engine so we can get it running. This is interesting. The sprocket on the injector pump has two alignment holes. I don't recall ever seeing this before. Anyway, the correct alignment hole will be the one where these marks line up when the alignment pin is inserted into the correct hole. As you can see, the teeth on the sprocket have been shaved away in this area to indicate this is the area we need to be looking at. One more thing, it's possible for the crankshaft to move while I fiddle with the timing belt, so I went ahead and put a wrench on the crank bolt and vice gripped the wrench to something solid on the car. I wanted to mention at this point, the cam sprocket is still loose, and that's exactly what we want. Once the belt's in and we confirm everything's aligned, then we can lock the cam sprocket in place. So as you can see, I inserted the injector pump alignment pin, and now I can slip the new timing belt in place. Fast forward a bit and the new timing belt's in place. I did this off camera because it's a bit tricky and it takes about 10 minutes to do, but with the camera rolling it takes forever to capture every little detail. Meh, this isn't a Volkswagen timing belt how-to video, it's just a video on what's involved in safely getting this diesel engine prepped for its first start in many years. Anyway, the belt tension feels about right and there's some flex but not too much, and we can easily flex the belt 45 degrees. I reckon now we can see if this engine will run. Okay, so we got a glow plug light, which is good news. And we have another light blinking. I'm not really sure what's going on there. That looks like the temperature gauge. That's weird. I don't think it's supposed to do this on a cold engine, or it could be a Volkswagen thing. It doesn't really matter because this car has been fitted with an aftermarket gauge, and possibly because this one's a bit flaky. Now, this may be difficult to believe, but I really don't know much about diesel Volkswagens, but I believe this is the cold start thingy, and it changes the injector pump timing or something like that. Well, here goes nothing. The good news is the engine started right up. The bad news is, well, one cylinder is not firing. You can hear it and you can even see it in the exhaust. Hopefully that'll go away once the engine runs a bit longer. Let's check that oil pressure. So far, so good. Yeah, it's definitely not hitting on all four, but you can hear that dead cylinder fire every once in a while. Fast forward a bit and the engine started running on all four cylinders and it sounds pretty good. Perhaps we had some air in one of the injector lines. I'm not really sure what the deal was. Now over here we have the mini fuel tank installed and it looks like we have plenty of fuel to take the car on a road test. Well, it's going to be a very short road test and it's not the fuel situation I'm worried about. You see, this back tire is beyond foobar and it's going to pop any second now. I was actually scared when I put air in this tire. Yeah, it's that sketchy. I reckon we'll be lucky if the car moves at all with this tire. Let's find out if that's true. Okay, well, it's got one of these anti-theft doohickeys, but I'm pretty sure we can figure out a way to make the car move. Actually, the clutch feels really good. I'll bet a box of donuts that the pressure plate and flywheel are a little bit crusty from sitting so long, but they should be fine in a moment or two. The engine runs and the car moves, and that's basically all I signed up for. The car still needs a lot of work, but I think the owner will be happy the car's running again. And based on the work he already did, I think he's talented enough to take this car to the next level. It's hard to say why this car didn't start 5 years ago. If I had to guess, I would say the injector pump was dry. And like I said, that's just a guess. It may have actually been timing issues, but unfortunately I didn't check any of that stuff before I took the timing belt off. And the reason is, I didn't want to rotate the engine and potentially cause damage to the valves. Better safe than sorry, especially on someone else's car. Of course, I'd rather be working on the supercharged Kubota diesel-powered Honda Insight, but we ended up having to order some parts, and we figured it would be fun to get this vintage VW running again while we waited for the parts to arrive. These things happen, so be sure and tune in next time when we fire up the supercharged Kubota, and I guarantee you this time around, we'll have the boost we're looking for. We'll see you next time. Until then.